was All-American in 2 sports. I broke world records. I played professional football. I play on the USA handball team now. And it guided me towards achieving these things, but it left me feeling very unfulfilled every time I'd achieve them. Or anytime we lose, it was like an attack on my life. Every loss we ever had on a sport, it was like my life was at stake. And I felt like I was worthless. Because if I didn't win, that meant no one was gonna accept me, or I wasn't good enough, or I was gonna be picked last or something. So I would take it so personally when I wouldn't win. And then I would take it out on my family, my girlfriends, my friends, like everything. And I didn't know how to communicate. And I'm still learning, I'm still imperfect every day, but it's like, I wasn't even aware. There was never information about how to connect or how to communicate and feel like it was okay or you're allowed to. Because anytime you try to talk about any vulnerabilities as a guy growing up for me, it was like, you're a P-U-S-S-Y. Or don't be a little girl, or don't be a B-I-T-C-H, all these things. And so I think it's very hard for me, and especially for a lot of men who grew up, to stand alone and feel like they belong in an isolated world if they're not going to join a group that's going to make fun of them or put other people down. So how do we stand alone when we're not introverted or we want to be around other people? And how can men communicate better or feel like it's okay to be vulnerable? Because we were talking before about how, most men that I know, played sports with, would never watch The Power of Vulnerability TED Talk, or they would never read, books from you or Oprah that I'm aware of, because they would talk bad about, female leaders trying to talk about vulnerability. They would say, that's soft, that's weak. I don't watch that stuff, I don't read that stuff. When really that's the stuff we need the most, in my opinion.
And I think it's changing. I think I told you earlier that I think 50% of the readers of Daring Greatly are men, and the vast majority of leaders who bring me into organizations are men. And I'll tell you why.
Wise men.
I hope. I can flip it for you on a dime. So it used to take me when men would say, this is how the call would go, hey, we'd love for you to come in and work with our leadership team. We saw your TED Talk, we thought it was great. Are you available? And I'd say, sure, what do you want me to talk about? And they'd say, anything but vulnerability and shame. And I would say,
why?
So what do you want me to talk about if I don't talk about vulnerability? And they'd say, courage. And then I'd say, okay. Then I would try to spend like a half an hour explaining the relationship between vulnerability and courage. Because all men want to be brave.
Isn't vulnerability courage?
Vulnerability is courage. So I only have to ask.
Isn't vulnerability power?
Yes, I have to ask one question to flip the whole thing. It's this. Vulnerability is defined as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Can you name one act of courage that you've ever been involved in or that you've ever even witnessed that did not involve uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure? And it's a loaded question because I know the answer is no, because I've asked it thousands and thousands. I've stood in front of Navy SEALs and Special Forces military personnel and said, give me an example. I want you to try hard to give me an example of courage that didn't require vulnerability. And in 10 years, I've never had a single person be able to come up. I've even had 2 guys come up to me who were in the military that said, we're gonna think about it and get with you.
They
and
never
I said,
got back
oh
to
my
you.
God, I said, do it. I would love it. Give me an example of courage, even on the field, that doesn't involve vulnerability. Like if you think you're being brave and it doesn't involve risk or uncertainty, you're not being that brave. If
It's
you
too
know
safe.
how it's going to turn out, it's not courage.